We believe in the beauty syndicate. So excited. I feel like little Shawnee again. And all these people came out to worship with us, and I am so in awe that God's people love God so much that they would come and do this with us. So we're gonna set up and get started. When you call on me, when you come and pray to me, I'll listen. When you come looking for me, you'll find me. Yes, when you get serious about finding me and want it more than anything else, I'll make sure you won't be disappointed, God's decree. I'll turn things around for you. I'll bring you back from all the countries in which I drove you, God's decree. Bring you home to the place from which I sent you off into exile. You can count on it. The reason that means so much to me is because in 2003, we opened Salon Epiphany. Salon Epiphany started with 74 of my own clients. My mom and I did this thing together. We went from 74 clients in November to 780 in July. That is like unheard of. And in July, I was diagnosed with 2 conditions in my brain. And from there, it felt like what was my dream and what was started off to be so beautiful ended up to be like my biggest nightmare. So when God says you're gonna do this again, I'm like, I almost died the last time. And now you're calling me back into something that scares me to death, not just because I'm afraid to fail, but I'm afraid to die. So I felt like I needed this. I need to know that God is with me, in it, around me, and I need God's people as well. So we're going to open up in prayer. Christian, will you open us up in prayer, please?
Of course.
Thank you very much.
Oh, gracious Father, we are just in awe of what you are just planning and the things that you're doing, the doors that you're opening, and the people that you're surrounding us with, Lord. I just pray that your hand is just covering this all, and that we're just praying for your protection, your wisdom, your encouragement, and definitely your heart in all this, Lord, that we know that this plan that you've put into Sean's heart is something that is bigger than us, Lord, and that we are here just to link our arms and really just be the ones that are just going to be the hands and feet of this whole thing, Lord. So I'm thankful and grateful to be a part of it. I pray for just continued wisdom over Sean and the endeavors, the people that needs to be around her. Please place them around her, whether they're financial people, whether they're people of the right stature, Lord. Kingdom-minded people. We just pray for that. We also pray against the enemy, that we are binding him right now in the precious blood of Jesus. He has no foothold in the plan for this, Lord. And that because your plan is mighty, your plan is victorious, we shall prevail in your name, Lord. We thank you, and we just, again, are just in awe to be a part of your mighty plan. In Jesus' holy name we pray.
Gosh, his story, his glory, it's an interesting concept because it's taken me a minute to understand that it is really his story, and I'm kind of an actor in this story. The journey and the story for me with Christ starts probably when I'm a little girl. I grew up predominantly in Northern California. Was born in San Francisco. My mom was 16 years old. My dad was 16 years old. And I was supposed to be put up for adoption at that time. But my mom chose to keep me. And from there, I stayed in foster care. My grandmother shortly then, I'm thinking about 6 months after I was born, allowed us to come and live with her. I had a hernia, a pretty bad abdominal surgery, which
put me in the hospital and enabled my mom and I to go live with her. My grandmother, both my grandmothers, were just amazingly strong women with these amazing stories, and they were like my parents. My dad's mom was Cleo, and my mom's mom, Inez, and then I had a great grandmother, Sarah Johnson. We called her Big Mama, and then I had Thomas Lemon, who was my grandfather. They took me to church. I can still remember my grandmother was an usher on Thursday nights, and my Big Mama is in the choir, and I can hear him, "We are soldiers." I can still hear, that ringing out. And so when I give my life to Christ, I guess I'm about 7. My first song isn't, some little "Yes, Jesus Love Me." It's I'm a soldier, right, in this thing. I grow up hard. Even though I know there's Jesus, and yes, there's a lot of going to church, but there wasn't a lot of Bible. And my mom, being a single parent, she had to choose. It's a choice I never want to make, to choose between raising a child and providing. That's a choice I never really had to make. And because of that, I spent a lot of time alone. There was a lot of harsh realities I experienced as a young person. I didn't finish high school. As a matter of fact, my graduation from school was 8th grade. That leaves a stain on you, because I knew I was smart, but why couldn't I press forward? Why couldn't I do the thing, right? Fast forward to, I guess, 1997. I had gotten married, and we lived in Oceanside at the time. No, that's a lie. We lived in Temecula. We bought a home in Temecula, and I woke up in this panic. I thought I had everything I wanted, right? I had the house, we had car, I had the things that I thought you needed to make a life for yourself. And I woke up in a panic, like, sat up straight up in the bed. Dre, that's my husband. Dre, we gotta go to church. He's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "We gotta go to church." I said, "Because we're gonna lose all this stuff. And I don't wanna lose our security, so we gotta get to this church." We go to a church called Mountain View. Ironically, I live at this huge Mountain View now, right? We go to a church called Mountain View Community Church. Another irony, when I was 13, I lost my virginity on the bathroom floor of a group home in a place called Mountain View, California. So I'm really big on looking for God in everything as a redeemer, right? So we step into this church, and it's cool, right? The pastor's kind of young. It's a cool church. And we left that day, and I'm like, all right, got the church in. God should be happy. Now let's get back to our life. About 6 months later, same panic. We gotta go back to church. We go to church. Something's different that day. He does a call to salvation, and he says, if you walked away and you want to come home, just raise your hand. You don't even have to come up here. Everybody close your eyes. Right where you are, raise your hand. And that day I raised my hand. I've learned something about myself in these years that God's taught me. I was sold out to the world, and I was sold out for Jesus. On that day, Jesus became the goal. Knowing, being, living for became the goal. And shortly after I would give my life, I started hearing, I want to be a living, breathing testimony. I literally started praying that, make me a living, breathing testimony of your goodness, grace, and mercy. I didn't know what I was praying, but God must have put those words there because that was his plan. His word says in Jeremiah 29:11, "For I know the plans that I have for you, plans for you to prosper." So those must have been the plans, because shortly after that, and I get pregnant, my son is born premature. And the reason he's born premature is because my blood pressure is 235 over 120. I'm bleeding out of out of my gums are just bleeding. My nose is bleeding. I have broken blood vessels in between my fingers. And I find out that I am dying. My kidneys are failing, my liver's failing, my blood platelets, which are supposed to be about 140,000, are at 90,000. They don't expect that we will survive till Sunday, and this is Wednesday, or till Saturday, and this is Wednesday. I'm taken by critical care ambulance to Loma Linda, which just so happens to be the hospital that I would go to now, because it's not that far away. It's the major hospital. And I'm there, my grandmothers come, everybody comes, and for 4 days I'm in labor. And this God that I'm just becoming to know, I'm like, well, I'm not understanding. I gave my life and it's getting worse. Like, my son's gonna die. He's not even due till December. This is August, and it's not looking good for me either right now. And I'm in a lot of discomfort and misery. I have so much fluid on me. I look like the Black Michelin Man, you know. It's confusing for someone in their 20s that everything is exploding all around you and you profess a God. By Saturday, the nurse comes running in and she says, "Hey, Mrs. Brown." She had been my nurse over the days. And she comes in and she says, "Let me look at your paper." And she goes, "Oh my God, I got to go get the chief of staff for the OBGYN or the labor and delivery." And they come down and they say, "Your son is dying. And we got to get this baby out right now." So they take me into emergency surgery. It is in that surgery that my son is delivered. He's 2 pounds, 7 ounces, but I lose half the blood in my body. We don't know that yet. We go through the night. My son does really well. For a 2-pound baby, he only spends 1 night on a ventilator. Come on. I mean, that doesn't even happen, really, okay? He is the smallest thing I've ever seen. I don't get to touch my son. I don't get to experience holding him. He's rushed away right away, and I'm a mess. My husband says that my organs are on the table because it was such a quick surgery. The next day, everybody's preparing to leave and go home because my family lived in Northern California. I'm in Southern California, and they're all preparing to leave. And we take a picture, and this picture, it stands today. It will be the logo for my Kingdom First Inc. Corporation. But both my grandmothers are joined hands. My dad's mom, my mom's mom at the top, and they both have their arms on me. And when I look at that, it lets me know that the things I've been through, God gave me those people, and those people's stories live in me. And he didn't let me die that day because it was part of his story that he would want to, that he's going to get glory out of today. I'll speed it up. I would have a grand mal seizure the next night. They would take me down to another, I don't know, some kind of room. I don't really know. I heard everything, but my husband's account of the story is that I was completely gray and I looked dead. But I could hear everything that they were saying. And the doctor said she needs blood right away. There is no blood showing. There's no red, no pink in her eye. I heard all of it. I didn't feel anything, but I heard him say, "Look in her eye," which means that my eye had to have been open, but I never felt the touch at all. I just heard everything. And after that, I guess I pass out. I hear my husband agree to give me the blood, and I get a blood transfusion. And the next day when I wake up, I'm like, "What happened?" And they're like, "You were dying." I get the opportunity to know Jesus as healer in that moment. I get the opportunity to know that he's a God that really does save. I'm stuck in that hospital so long that the nurses come to shave my legs because I've been there and they feel sorry. So they're coming on their days off to visit me. I have no family there. Shortly after that, I was taken back to the hospital because I had an infection in my stomach. And I had another 4.5 hour wound debridement surgery, which left my stomach open down to the muscle covering. So you could put your arm into my abdomen to about here, and they would wipe it and clean it. It was the most vile, excruciating pain that you can even imagine. That went on for about 6 months. We lost everything. We lost our home, both cars. I had to go get welfare. I had never been on welfare. My mom was a single mom. I don't ever recall living on welfare. Here I am, a married woman with a child. Now I'm on welfare. On one day, my electricity gets cut off, my cable gets cut off, and my phone, and I have no car, and I've got this premature baby who had just been released from the hospital because he had an infection in his bloodstream, and he was 12 hours away from dying. And my husband and I are under 30. Okay, so it is, even as I tell the story now, I don't even think I've really fully processed and digested what God allowed us to go through, but also the miracles that we saw in the midst of the struggles. The fact that my husband and I were just raging and fighting. I was afraid. I didn't know how we were going to make it. I didn't know how we were going to survive out here. And he wanted to stay and I wanted to go, and my mom wanted me to come home. And it was just this craziness. But finally my husband concedes and we leave and we go to Northern California. And I, shortly after leaving here and losing everything, I decided to go to beauty college. And that's where God starts to take me on this new journey. The journey that began really when I was 9 years old. I said to my grandmother, I'm going to own a salon in New York City. And she says, oh, pumpkin, just stay here and put your salon in Vallejo. And I'm like, no, Granny, I'm going to own a salon in New York City. Well, that was still with me. So much so that I'm backtracking a little bit. When I was pregnant with my son, I was home from work sick, and there was an Oprah Winfrey episode on. And she said, find what you love. Money will always follow, but you have to do the things you love. And I got to watch these people. One lady started this $1 million business selling Tupperware, and it was all these things, but God was speaking, and he was like, do what you love. So it was at that point that I decided I was going to go to beauty college. So when all of this happened and I survived it, I went ahead and moved forward, and to God be the glory. We had lost our home, so where my credit was shot, everything was shot. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. But I went to a meeting, and my aunt says, go to the meeting. I go to the meeting, and they said, we know you're here for the free tuition. Excuse me? No, some of us weren't here for the free tuition. Some of us just came here on faith. But faith opened up the door to the greatest meeting of my life. It established the next stage that God wanted to take me through. I started about 6 weeks after that, and I think I was in school about 3 days, and they I feel like I am pregnant. Now my son's only about 10 months old. I just died. They told me I could never have another child. They told me it wasn't possible. They told me I couldn't have birth control because of the blood pressure issues. And it wasn't possible anyway. Well, I was pregnant. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to die this time. This time I'm going to die because I'm in love with Jesus, right? And abortion isn't an option, right? So it didn't kill me last time. So this is it. This is how my story is going to end. So I continue to press forward through beauty college. I'm about 6 months pregnant, almost 7 months. I fall down the stairs, hit my head on some stairs. They take me to the hospital, and it is there that I have a concussion, but they also see something going on in my brain. But because I'm pregnant, I can't have an MRI. So they say, we'll wait and take a look after your child's born. We'll look at that. I'm kicked out of beauty college at that point because they say my child is a danger, so I can come back after beauty college. It seemed like it was one setback after another. Every time I tried to do the thing I saw, it was a setback, right? But I took it in stride, set aside, had my child, came back from having my baby in 10 weeks, back to school. Put her in a daycare, put both my kids in daycare, got to school, finished school famously, and end up going to school. It's my Helen. I'm wearing this button. Helen told me, if you don't go anywhere, if you don't go and work for Julie Gardner, you will have made the mistake of your life. There is nowhere else for you to go. Helen meant the world to me. She was with me through my music career. She was with me through everything. So when she said, go work for Julie, of course, that I went and made the appointment, and I went and sat and talked to Julie. And I didn't think I could do it because I had 2 kids, I had 2 babies, and it was far. It was a 45-minute drive to work every day. But my husband and the Holy Spirit were like, that's where you're supposed to go. Well, that's where my hair story really begins. I learned some valuable things. There's a woman named Valerie comes and sends me to Pastor Paul Shepherd's church. And Pastor Paul Shepherd is preaching messages on your life and your house being under construction. I'm sitting under the tutelage of people that are just brilliant and they love Jesus. And so it's like, here we go. We are soldiers. So I'm literally getting schooled up, right? In preparation for I don't know what. I'm getting schooled up in the hair business. I'm getting schooled up in the ministry and the word. I'm getting schooled up as a wife because marriage is hard. I'm getting schooled up in it's all like at one time. Jesus is just this weaving and interweaving this whole story, which feels like chaos, if that makes any sense. I decide from there that I've learned enough in 2 years, and God is calling me now to open my own salon, which takes me from the Bay Area to Sacramento, which I know nobody. So here we are. This is faith, right? I'm making more money doing hair than I made in tech and in marketing and those jobs. I'm making more money doing that. But God calls me out. Okay. We're going to Sacramento. Okay. Here we go. So I get to Sacramento, and Sacramento is way different than the Bay Area. The Bay Area, my salon was multicultural, it was diverse. It was a family. We did hair together. Now I'm in this place where people are saying stuff to me like, can you do my kind of hair? Do you know? It's like, yo, yeah, I can. So I'm having to develop another skill, right? Now I'm having to learn how to deal with, I guess it's racism in the midst of, in my industry, because I could get Black women to come into a white environment, but I couldn't get white women to come into a Black environment, and I could do everybody. So I didn't want to be pigeonholed, so I was going to have to put up with something. I either was going to have to dumb myself down and be one-dimensional, or I was going to have to trust God and do the thing that didn't feel comfortable. I mean, I endured stuff like, I'm standing there, and when I say it was white, it was all white except for me and a girl named Chaz, and she was like Islander or something, something like that, very exotic, beautiful. I'm standing there, I'm doing my client, and the little boy is standing there with his mom, and my station was right in front of the shampoo bowl, and the little boy goes, oh my God, you guys have a black person. It's a black person in here. And I was like, inside I'm mortified, right? But I'm from the Bay. You never let people see you sweat. And I was like, where's the black person? You know, you gotta bring a comedy. I have an element, I have the ability to laugh. And everyone laughed. And the mother was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I said, you know what? You shouldn't be sorry, because that is the truth. What he was saying in essence is, I've come with my mom to the salon for years, and I've never seen a black woman doing hair in any establishment that my mom has been in. That for me was the key. This is not God's vision for beauty. This is not God's plan. This is a farce. So I knew then that what God was calling me to do was bring his kingdom to the beauty industry. He wanted to use my experience in corporate America, in marketing. He wanted me to make the beauty industry a viable business. And that's what I set out to do. So I told you, Sacramento was new. I knew nobody. So I took 74 of my clients, got started Salon Epiphany in November of 2003. I had employees. So these girls were green, out of school. We paid them salary versus commission, benefits, everything. So that means that everything is coming out of our pockets with 74 people. So we're talking an overhead of about $30,000 a month. So that means I'm the only one with the ability to generate an income. I have to put everything aside. I have to put everything and focus on how I'm going to do that. We go from 74 clients in September to 780 in July. It is like we're on a national TV show. It is like it can't get any better, right? It's great. God is finally doing it. Literally 3 weeks from what I'm about to tell you, this happened. I'm driving to my kids to daycare. I'm about to drop them off. I'm passing in front of Macy's in Arden Fair Mall. And I hear God say, not in an audible voice, but if anybody knows the spirit, you just, there's an impression. Are you willing to suffer so that others might know me? Well, I had just been through all that stuff, right? And things are going really good. I think that's how God began you. And I was like, yes. I say that out loud. Yes, God. And he goes, no. Are you willing to suffer so that others might know me? Yes. It was silent after that. In 7 days, I find out I'm being evicted from my house, from my apartment. I find out I have 2 conditions in my brain that both require brain surgery. And I have to move out. Not only do I have my evicted, I have to move out of my apartment the day before my birthday, and this is Mother's Day weekend. So my birthday's May 21st. This is Mother's Day weekend. I have 2 weeks before the sheriff's coming to lock me out. All that's happening at one time. And then again, here's God. He's right there. I'm never going to leave you. I'm not going to forsake you. I open up the Bible. He shows me this illness will not end in death, but it'll bring glory to God. Showing me Lazarus. He shows me Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, tears of blood. Not my will, God, but yours. We came here to do God's will. It wasn't about me. Back in 1997, I said I wanted to follow Jesus. That meant that I followed him in the good, in the bad, in the high, in the low. It meant following him. So we start the journey to surgery. The first surgery is 5.5 hours long. I have a condition called Arnold-Chiari malformation. My brain is literally resting on my esophagus. They say if you turn wrong, it will crush your esophagus and you will not even have time to call 911. You will be dead. So I have that surgery first. 8 weeks later, I'm scheduled for the second surgery. We go and visit the neurosurgeon, and he says, we met with what's called the tumor board at UC Davis Medical Center. Everyone on that tumor board has suggested you do not have this surgery. You cannot survive. Okay. So what does that mean? Can I live with this thing in my head? No. Okay. How much time do I have? I don't know. So what does that mean? The tumor is blocking the left ventricle of your brain. The ventricle is an artery where the cerebral spinal fluid flows through. Once it lodges, it will cut that off. You can't survive. My husband asked, so what would you do? What would you tell your wife or your mother? The surgeon says, I would tell her not to have this surgery. But we can send you out, Miss Brown. You need to think about what you want to do. You need to make the decision. When I go back home, I get in my bed. Again, I see Lazarus. Again, I see Jesus, the Garden of Gethsemane. I do look for something alternative, but they say it's only a 20% chance that this invasive surgery will, help you. So when I go back, nobody knows what I'm going to do. But when we get in the car to drive that morning, the song is on. It's called Have Your Way. And it says, whatever you desire to do in this house, Lord, have your way. And all the way to the hospital, it was just have your way, have your way, have your way. So when I walk in, I'm crying because I know what I'm going to do, but nobody else does. And I walk in and the neurosurgeon says, okay, Mrs. Brown, what's your decision? And I said, I'm going to have this surgery. My husband goes, what? I said, I'm having this surgery. And this neurosurgeon says, okay, good. I like surgery. All right. So I have a 12.5-hour brain surgery in December of 2004. And my Aunt Audrey, who's no longer here, tells me that Dr. Schroet came running and skipping out of the surgery room. And he said the tumor fell out on its own. When we got down to it, it literally fell out on his own. Dr. Schroet would later sit on a video and he would testify. It is her faith that got her through this because there's no other explanation for what we saw. I couldn't walk. I was in a wheelchair. I'd lost the vision in my right eye. I couldn't use my hand, my right hand. I'm a hairdresser, so my dominant hand was twisted in like that. I couldn't tell you this is a watch. I couldn't tell time. I couldn't count. I couldn't dial a phone. I didn't know what anything else. It was like starting a life all over again with a recollection that you used to know how, if that makes any sense. It's like being trapped inside your own body. They would come and ask me things like, what do you want to eat? And all I could say was, it looks like this. It just no ability to help yourself. I went into a very deep depression. I would sleep for 15 hours. I would make a coffin, so to speak, against the wall and block myself in because I was afraid of everything and everybody. I didn't want to leave the hospital because I didn't really know my family and I didn't want to go home with them. I begged them not to send me home with those people is what I said. Don't send me home with those people, please. And the doctors were like, we have to send you home now. You can't stay anymore. You have to rehabilitate from home. When I got home, I couldn't see God. I couldn't read anymore. I don't even recall feeling him anymore like I always could. It felt really dark and I felt really depressed and I felt really lost and I felt like a toddler almost, without a parent. By March, I go and see the surgeon again and he's like, things are looking good, Mrs. Brown. Things are starting to, come back together. We did another MRI. I come back in June, I believe, and they had given me, at this time, I'm taking a lot of pills, and they had put me on 3 different antidepressants because I wanted to commit suicide. And I wanted to be put in an insane asylum. So they put me on 3 different antidepressants. And he's like, you're looking good. Everything's looking good. They had just switched one of the medications. And 7 days after that, looking good, I had another grand mal seizure at home. They took me back to the hospital and they did a CAT scan. and said, you need to go see your neurosurgeon again. When I get back to the office to see my neurosurgeon the next week, he's like, what are you doing here? And I said, well, nobody told you that I had a grand mal seizure? He's like, no. He goes, well, let me look. He gets on the computer and he's feverishly looking and he opens it up and he grasps his face like this. And he's like, you need a third surgery on your brain, Mrs. Brown. I am so, so sorry. And I'm like, okay. So in between June and October, when I have the next surgery, I hear a message. And it's amazing to me that I remember these things because, I'm rehabilitating my brain, but this is as clear as a bell to me. We go to church and we're at a new church, and this church is all Caucasian church. But the pastor, his name is Pastor Lance, he's preaching a message on count it all joy whenever you encounter trials of various kinds. And I'm fascinated, right? I'm like, at this time, my brain is like a little kid. And I'm like, I want to understand everything. So when we get done, they had a spaghetti dinner for new people. So we went to it. And I said, Pastor Lance, what does it mean to count it all joy whenever you encounter trials of various kinds? Because I know what I'm going through, and I know I'm about to enter another surgery, right? And I was so grateful for his answer. He said, I am called to preach the truth. Doesn't mean I've experienced it all. I'm just called to preach it. I haven't experienced it. I'm like, Surgery comes. Have that third surgery. It is rough. And what happens in that third surgery, I'm going to have to skip forward real quick because this is how this ties in. When he saw that scan from the night that I had the grand mal seizure, what he was gasping at, which I don't find out until 2016, what he was in awe about was the fact that the first surgery that I had been reversed, like it had never happened. He said, and he shows me in 2016, do you see in March? This is the MRI we took. Here's all of the scar tissue. Here's everything from the surgery that we did in September. Here's what we did in December. That night in June, they take that scan, and it is exactly the same as it was before they ever touched me in September. He says, I have no explanation for that. This is in 2016. I have no explanation for that. So my estimation is that in their effort to make sure that this didn't reverse, it was very aggressive. And the surgery, the way they sutured it up, it was so tight that my skin grew over top of the staples. So when I go back to get the staples out, they literally have to cut and dig the staples out with no anesthesia out of the back of my head. And I am sweating. And my girlfriend, who's been with me through a lot of stuff, they had to literally push her up against the wall with the bed to hold her up. But I can honestly tell you, I know it hurt, but it was like he was in me. It was like he shielded me from the total weight of the pain. It's like he took it too. I don't know. It's like, yeah, it hurt. But it was like, I don't even remember. I remember my stomach. I don't even remember that. I just remember needing to console my friend. And I remember her saying, sweetie, your head looks like hamburger meat. It was just all open. But I heal from that. I heal from that too. And I make it through. I come back to the salon when they say I'm not coming back. They say I can never do hair again. They were going to pay me $1,300 a month for the rest of my life. And I was like, nope, I'm going back to work. I'm going back to work. I had that surgery October 17th, 2005, which was my son's, I believe, 10th birthday, or 7th birthday, I'm sorry, 7th birthday. I was back behind my chair February, I think 20th of 96. And by September, I'm the hair doctor on Good Day, Sacramento. I can only attribute that to God's plan, for I know the plans I have for you. Just because he has a plan doesn't mean it lines up to the way I think it should be. It's his plan, his way, his life. It all belongs to him. It's this show, my story, his glory, or his glory, my story. I could be getting it wrong. You know, I have brain injuries, but it is for his glory. My mom and I opened Salon Epiphany together, and my illness created a stress. So she left the business. The girls I trained left me and took 75% of the business. I was $25,000 behind in the rent and ready to shut the doors. I got a phone call on the day that I was about to shut the door. And I really want somebody who right now is struggling with believing that God will provide. I was $25,000 in the hole. My rent was like $5,500, $5,700 a month. I talked to the leasing company. I said, all right, I don't have it. I said, I'm trying, I don't have it. I said, I'll be out in 30 days. This again is in August. August is a big month for me. It's August. I hang up the phone and I tell the receptionist, I'm not taking any more clients today. I'm gonna go home, cancel my day. So I'm getting my stuff together and I'm crying, feeling like a failure, and there's a knock on my office door. And I open the door and she says, it's RJR, they wanna talk to you. I pick up the phone and I'm like, I'm going home for the rest of the day. I'm gonna come back and I'll start cleaning everything out. And she says, no, Sean, the owner told me to tell you he's wiped out your whole debt. You don't owe him anything. And he also wants to know what you can afford, because you can just pay that to your leases. Huh? What? Excuse me? Oh, okay. I can pay $2,000. That's fine. $2,000, we'll take it. I paid $2,000. My mentor, who I left in the Bay Area, came and rocked it out with me every week to help me. I told you the girls left me. I had no clients. I had all this stuff to rebuild. She came, helped me liquidate the assets, stayed with me almost 2 years after we closed the business down. As I become the hair doctor and I build this up, I'm going to work. I'm working like 18-hour days. I didn't realize that the amount of money I was spending on the salon, I wasn't seeing any of that profit. I went 5 years with no salary after I owned the business. I had to file bankruptcy in 2008. I lost everything again. I got a minivan, which was, that for me was the worst of it all. I had to drive a minivan. It felt like I was dying. You know, I had to tell the kids, no, we ain't turn the music up. We're in a minivan. No, turn it down. Embarrass me. But, you know, it's like, okay, God, all right. So we get started. It's May of 2008. I didn't know how much money I was really earning because it was all going out to spend it. I had taken out a loan with my mom, additional $50,000. I was able to pay that $1,000 a month. I was able to pay for rent for 2 chairs. I was able to pay a 50% commission. I was able to pay for the assistant. God provided in ways, it was like he rained down. And then the hair doctor just shot through the roof. It was like everything I wanted. Yes, Sean, you can have that. Yes, it was the most amazing time. And then 2009 came and my father-in-law died. And then my cousin was diagnosed with cancer, breast cancer. And then 2010 came and my 2 grandmothers, who were my parents, they died 4 days apart. My birthday is May 21st. My son is October 17th. They died on December 17th and December 21st. The very next year, I was diagnosed with vulva cancer. I had a partial vulvectomy. The next year after that, I was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer. I went through a double mastectomy for 25 hours. I lost my sight, lost the right breast, and the reconstruction failed. I was in the hospital for weeks. I had drains for about 8 weeks, and I still went back to work with the drains on a walker. And then it was time for chemo. The day I start chemo, my other mentor passes away, Bishop Sherwood Carthen. On the day I'm sitting in the chemo chair, turn on my iPad, and it's an announcement. Bishop Sherwood Carthen dies of a heart attack today. And I'm like, can life get any worse? I have cancer that they say, again, I can't survive. I've got to go through dose-dense chemotherapy. So for those of you that don't know what that means, instead of giving me 1 hour's worth of chemo over a year and a half, they gave me a year and a half's worth of chemo from the end of September to the beginning of January, which means for 6 hours, for the first 4 treat rounds, I get 6 hours of what they call the red devil. This little ditty cannot touch your skin. They bring it in a metal box. It can only go intravenously. It is bright red. And what it does is it kills everything. So I had sores all over my mouth, down my throat, into the inside of my chest cavity. I lost hair everywhere on my body. My hands turned black on both sides, black on both sides. My hands were on fire, so I'd have to wear gloves in the shower, blisters on my feet. I end up with neuropathy. I lost my sense of taste, my sense of smell. I couldn't walk my feet, and I still went to work because I'm a hairdresser. And so when I don't get work, I don't get paid. And I had $1,400 a month, and I still had a clientele to keep. And so I wore those gloves, and I had an assistant, and I still did the work because if I don't work, how am I going to survive? My husband had an affair in the process. We got evicted again in the process. I had 2 kids to take care of. And God said, follow me. Follow me. Follow me. Follow me. I had great mentors and people praying and watching over me. And I just kept hearing him. I kept seeing Job. Job was one of the first books of the Bible I read. And I kept seeing Job. And Job, the second half of his life, God blessed that far greater than the first. That happens in Job 42. My son's football jersey number was 42. I couldn't walk away from what I said I believed. If I said I believed him, then I needed to believe him when it was good, and I needed to believe him when it was bad. I wanted to see the second half. And if I wasn't going to get there, it was going to be because I died, not because I quit. My kids were a big part of what God used to anchor me. I come from women who are very strong. They would leave in a minute. That was my legacy. It's what I was used to. It was one of the hardest things to do. It was hard to stay. It was hard to believe God through all of the ill. It was hard, but at the same time, at every step of the way, his faithfulness would shine through. I was never without. Every time an eviction came or something crazy, my husband was doing crazy, God showed up. Every time I needed an income, God showed up. My client, I have no money to pay my car payment. I open up an envelope and $1,000 falls out. because God told her to send it. So it was like I wanted to be the characters of the Bible, and I think a lot of people do. But what we don't realize is in order to be the characters of the Bible, there's suffering. God's really clear that we have to identify with his suffering as disciples of Christ. We are followers of Jesus. That means we're imitators of him. That means that through persecution, through hurts and pains, and we know that the people closest to us are the ones that can create the most pain. But if God's a redeemer, he got a plan for redemption. And now I'm starting to see the plan for redemption. You know, we're going to go to a prayer vigil tonight because, yes, Salon Epiphany was my training ground, but the Beauty Syndicate is what Salon Epiphany was training me for. We're going to get to see that. This house I live in, I only lived about 3-4 miles away when we had to leave running with no money, no car, no nothing. That was only 3 miles away. God brought me back full circle to a place that I never thought I would come back to in order to show what he said I would be from the beginning. In 1997, he said, I'm going to make you a living, breathing testimony. I'm going to prosper you in the land where the enemies tried to take you down. I'm bringing you back. I was in Sacramento last year. I did not really know we would come back here, but I see now why we're back here. And every day when I meet new people, and I get to talk to people, and I get to share this story, it's like God keeps telling me they're waiting for you. They're waiting for you. When I get to sing, he brought me back here to sing because I lost that 20 years ago, but he's bringing that back. It's like he truly is who he says he is, which means I am who he says I am. And that means that every person within the sound of my voice is who he says you are. There's only one entity that is vested in you not being who you are created to be, and that's the enemy. And I don't care what it is that you're going through. I don't care what it is that you've been through. God is faithful and he has a plan for it. Every day for me isn't cake. This is the hardest thing, to believe God for something that nobody really believes you can do. I don't have a high school education. I don't have a bachelor's degree. But what God has put in my spirit is Kingdom First Inc., the Kingdom Builders Project, Beauty Syndicate Consulting Firm, Puppy Feet Media, Block 52 Music and Publishing, books, music, everything that he put in me, he wants a return on his investment, and I'm going to give it to him.